Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is important than the messenger. I want to give a shout out to everybody that financially supported the last live stream I had, which was uh, that was a few days ago. It was before, I think it was Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. My last live stream was supported. Quite a few of you came through. To everyone that supported the last two live streams, thank you from the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind. I'm now able to add sound effects uh, to my live streams more easily. And I thank StreamYard for that. I also want to give a shout out to Abdullah bin Babi Atayyib. May Allah reward him immensely. There's a scholar whose name is dangerous for me to say on YouTube, but he was a scholar and he eventually became wanted without actually being even accused of any crimes in the States, except one that was dropped later on. After he went through this experience where he was accused of something and then it was dropped, he then decided to leave the States. He said, never mind. And he left. And so later on passed away in a violent encounter that he did not know was coming. After he got to his parents' homeland, those authorities would pick him up, and they told him they picked him up on the request of the FBI, even though he wasn't wanted back stateside. And then they would interrogate him, and he got locked up for a long time, and then he was finally released because there was nothing on him. But he was militant. And so, and going into some hills and mountains to be left alone, he was later on targeted from above, I'll say. Before he left the United States, he did a series on the hereafter. He talked about the Antichrist. And in Arabic, the Antichrist title is a Dajjal. Every prophet that was ever sent to any audience warned his people about the Antichrist. Now, the Antichrist is not a figure in whom those of the oldest of Abrahamic faiths believe. They believe that that's actually going to be the Christ. That's why many will fall for him, at least up to a certain point. Later on, as this Antichrist begins to claim being divine, many will say, wait, that's blasphemy, and they won't follow him anymore. Quite a few will actually accept Islam at that point. There are many Christians that believe in the Antichrist. I mean, if you are a Bible-believing Christian, you believe in the Antichrist. And you will know that the Antichrist is such based on what he claims and what he does. And he will then later claim to be Christ, and then he will claim to be God. The Muslims have even more details. We are told what he's going to look like, certain things about his life. We'll be able to recognize him visually. He will be able to cure a lot of things, but he will not be able to cure an affliction in his own eye. I want you to stop and think about that. We have details others don't have. Yet and still, the scholar that later on passed away, uh, an attack from above, we'll say, stated that the majority of his followers would be women. And he said, if you look at what the women will be going through, it makes sense because the women will have kids to feed. And this will be during a time of famine and drought. And those who do not follow him will go hungry. So the kids will go hungry, the babies will go hungry, and it's going to really just drive the mothers to go to him so they can eat. And I remember thinking, well, as a dad, that would bother the hell out of me too. It would bother me as well that my kids got to go hungry. I got to go hungry because the only one that's allowed to call the rain down is this no good bastard that God gave a lot of power to test human beings. I'm a dad. That doesn't mean, I mean, hell, it would bother me just having kids in my house that are hungry. Well, guess what? That particular question of mine was never answered. And then I had to realize something when Abdullah bin Babi Atayyib in my chat reminded us that the majority of the Antichrist followers would be women. And it hit me. He won't even be handsome. See, we were not told that the majority of his followers would be parents of children. That's not what we were told. But that they would be women. And that women would have to be tied down to stop from going forward to join him. You wouldn't have to tie the women, you wouldn't have to tie the children down. You would have to tie the women down at home to stop them from going out to join the Antichrist. What would it be? It would be the fact that he's evil, that he has power. That's all it would take. He's evil and he has power. It would not be that he's handsome. He's going to have an afflicted eye he can't fix. It's just as plain and as simple as he has power because God gave him power as a test of human beings, and he's evil because he will only use it to starve out people that don't worship him and to feed those who worship him. Not who worship God, but to starve those who don't worship the Antichrist and to feed those who worship the Antichrist. He would use his power just for that purpose. That's how he would use it. That's evil. God himself doesn't do that. But the minute he gives his power to the Antichrist is going to do exactly that. It dawned on me that it won't because he's more select or because he was a more self-developed man or because he was a self-improved man. That will not be what it is that drives these broads, these chicken heads to go follow him. The starvation of their kids may or may not play a part in this. But that would play a part in parents joining him, not just women. For men to not be driven to follow him as much would either mean that men are apathetic parents or that men are righteous parents that are not willing to feed their kids at the expense of the kids' souls and the expense of the parents' souls. In any case, that's what dawned on me. And I thought about this. And then the next day, I think it was, or later that same night, I saw that Passport OG did a video on the women in China that want the bad boys too. China. China, the identity of which is less related to the white Western world's identity than the black Western identity is related to theirs. China, with a completely different paradigm, cultural heritage, mindset for the most part, struggles with the same damn thing. You got women outnumbered by men. They want bad man, bad boy, carefree, happy go lucky, tats on a motorcycle, doesn't actually care about responsibility. That guy. He gets their youth, their fertile years. If she becomes pregnant, he bounces. But that's what happens. Now, why is it that these ladies in China feel confident to come back later on and circle the block when they're a single mom or just used up and can't give a good guy his own kids and then decide to come circle around that block? What's the reason that they feel they can do this? Because they likewise are sitting up here in an agreement. They are going to shut responsible men out. And they're going to screw what they perceive to be bad boys. And that's the end of that. I did know that they had problems with materialism in the 90s and the 2000s. I saw those videos. Music videos they made with traditional music, but the lyrics of which were just about what a man has to have. And don't send me no average broke ass man and stuff like that, just with Mandarin or Cantonese. But now I listened to a Chinese woman with a translation of what the bad boys could get out of them that good men couldn't get. It's like I was listening to a documentary about the West from a woman speaking in Mandarin through a translator. That's what it was like. Now, the question becomes this: is it an instinct in women to pick evil in men? Or is it something they have to learn? I don't fivaguk which one. You leave alone the ones that have that. Now, if they're willing to go ahead and pick a good man anyway, they're willing to go ahead and make that right choice anyway, and they admit that what they're attracted to is evil and something's wrong with them. I would say, okay, I'll leave it up to the man to decide if he wants to go ahead and be her selection, her choice, even if he's not her preference. Do you agree to her choosing you? It's up to you. At the very least, she admitted that her preference is wrong, but she's going to make a responsible choice. I leave it up to you. Kind of like if a woman sits up and says, "Well, I'm attracted to women, actually, but it's wrong. I'm not going to choose that. You're a good man. You're responsible. I'm going to choose you. So why is the right thing to do?" I leave it up to the man and say, "Okay, I accept or not." I don't know. I got to think more about it. Then again, I would tell my son, "No, don't accept that because she'll leave." So no, I would tell you not to do that even then. But the point is, this is what I'm going to explain to you guys what this means. We know that in Latin America, because it is still in the Western Hemisphere and highly exposed to pop culture from the US, but it requires translations into Spanish. We know that there's an issue there with women there that still want the bad man, the rude boy, that sort of thing. Well, since that's what we know is going on, you got the culture drop. I call it dropping. drugging and robbing. And I don't care if they drug a man to death, even if they weren't trying to do it. If they find out they've done it, so be it. Did they get the electronics and the valuables and get the money for it? That's what they care about. Because that's who the huck they are. They're sitting up here and they're thinking to themselves, we know that these guys from North America are ill treated by the women in North America. We know that because of the lack of experience they have, the lack of normal experience, they've only gotten negative feedback. We know that number one, that has caused them to be inexperienced. They're going to be clumsy sometimes with women. They don't have to be evil, just they'll be clumsy, they'll be inexperienced. We know that, but we don't care. We're not forgiving that. We're not overlooking that. We're not going to teach these guys to be better. What we're going to do instead is we are going to drop them. And the only way we're going to actually try to permanently latch on to them is if it's for a way to get to the States, or if we're single moms and we can get them to play stepdad. There's literally no better deal we need to offer them because they're already getting such a bad deal in North America that if we just get them a better deal, we're competitive. They know this. So it gets worse. Since we know that they're facing this, the guys that go to Latin America, there are other men that say, well, I'd rather go to Southeast Asia. It's safer. At least they're nicer there on average. But where do you go in Southeast Asia? Most are going to Pattaya because that's where you can take all the game work out of it and you pretty much pay for play. And they're playing for pay. Now, they nicer about it. Well, from everything everybody else has said, they are traditionally nicer about it. But it's still very mercenary. But I'm going to explain this to you gentlemen right now. I told you all about trying to go somewhere and play body count catch up with these Westernicias. You leave the Westernisha behind in the West, land somewhere, and you still want to get Westernisha's body count to compete with her. That's a mistake. Rather, you were trying to game up the local women that are not selling box, or you were trying to pay the ones who are selling box so you can get a high body count. It really doesn't matter which one you were trying to do. I'm telling you now, that's expensive, one way or another. But I also want you guys to realize that you will turn Southeast Asia from a place in which single moms might choose you independently of them being single moms into another place in which single moms only will be the ones to choose you because they're single moms. You don't want that. Southeast Asia is already getting a double dose of evil influences through social media. Number one, from China. And number two, from the West. Whether you are paying for play or not, whether you were doing that or not, I'm telling you that if you are simply trying to play body count catch up, you at some point are going to wind up having to pay, and you still won't play catch up with the West Tunisia. And then you will turn because you're trying to compete. You're trying to rack the body counts up. They're going to sit up and say, well, it's our body. This is what we want in exchange for it. And when you start, I realize this now, it doesn't really matter where the hell you go. When you start to sit up here and put them in a position to dictate what you must do and accept in order to get up to an acceptable body count that some Westernisha told you was acceptable or showed you was acceptable, then they're going to turn around and start making similar demands as the Westernishas. They might start off being nicer about it. This thing works in stages. First, they're just single moms because, it's a sexually not conservative environment. But the kids stay with her and with grandparents and with dad and with his parents. They're not on you. And then it becomes a place where um, single moms now are choosing you because, well, it's independent of them being a single mom. You just weren't there in time enough to be the one to shoot the club up first and have your first kids be her first kids. You're not from there, so you got there late. That's all. And then it goes from there to being a place where single moms come to you because they're single moms. They wouldn't pick you if they weren't single moms. Because since guys are trying to get their body counts up so much, the women are able to sit back and say, well, you know what? What do I want out of this? And eventually they say, I want these genes and I want those resources. They're not going to come from the same guy. So I'm just going to play the two against the middle. Just like Westernisha. We must be sure that we do not go anywhere with a mindset that is going to reward bad behaviors, incentivize bad choices. Now, I told you that there's a solution for Black folk in general, and the sexual part of life is already addressed in that. I've mentioned that before. It would be better, actually, to try to keep it honorable, but then to replace the bad wives with good wives. Okay, you married her. She turned out to be a bad wife. Bye-bye. Split as peacefully as you possibly can and replace her with a good wife. I've recommended that before. Hell, two good wives. Competition's something else. I mentioned that for a reason. If you don't think you can go that route, you still must be careful to not turn these places into places where they can do what Westernisha's doing. Because all it takes is the possibility for enough of them to start doing that, dual mating. And then they start telling their friends, oh, don't worry about it. You don't need to be responsible. You're young now. Screw that dude over there with the muscles, the tall guy. Yeah. No protection. None. No responsibility. None. You're going to carry your baby. Then you find some of these other guys over here and they get to play stepdad. They don't have any better options anyway because those are the only options offered to them back in the West. All you got to do is be nice about it. And you got a stepdad. Now, you may say, well, I ain't going to accept that. Well, I know, but look at, most of you won't accept it in the West. That's good. You're waking up. You won't accept it in the West, but you have to leave. I don't want you in a situation in which not only do you have to leave, but you have to leave only to land somewhere where it's going to be the same goddamn thing. Westernishas want it to be that way. I realize now one reason they're not following you in larger numbers and what they are is because they have already been able to succeed to a certain extent in getting some other ladies to play the same game. So you can sit up and say, well, it's not that deep, Black. Yeah, not now. What are you doing to make sure it won't get that deep? That's going to be the other question. Have you thought about what it takes to make sure that if it does get to be what I'm saying, you didn't play any part in it? What you want is a situation in which if a few of them even try the dual mating strategy, they got it from some Westernisha, and they have to face the question not being answered. Well, who's going to sit up and play stepdad? And there's nobody stepping up. That's what you want to see to it, because a lot of you guys are not ready to leave a place like the West, land somewhere, and then have it be exactly like that, and you make the same choice again, start over again, go somewhere else again. Most of you are not ready to do that 2 times in a few short years. You may be ready to visit different places, but most of you will not be willing to actually relocate 2 times in a few short years if you can help it. Most of you would reach a fatigue if you kept going to places and landing, and everywhere you landed, they want bad boy to shoot the club up, and then they want Mr. Responsible Man to play stepdad. If you found that everywhere was like this, many of you, because of that shackle in your mind that got you trying to play body count catch up in the first place, would eventually hold you back and have you thinking, that's all there is anywhere I go. I might as well go ahead and accept to be stepdad. Many of you, because you won't live in too many countries in one short time anyway. Many of you would think, well, you know what? In the States, it's a thankless job. At least over here, they treat me better about it, so I'll go ahead and take it. Well, that's fine if you're already a dad and she got to be a stepmom. That's one thing. But you'll be childless, and they'll be trying to run this on you. What I want is for nobody to run these games on you, no matter how nice they are about these games. That's what I want for you, even if you don't know to want it for yourself. I hope that what I said helps. I mean that from the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind. Again, thank you for listening. Black heart, black mind, blackout, assalamu alaikum, black heterosexual, non-select male power. Because them Westernicians don't like it, and black patriarchy until extinction of Judgment Day. Thank you for flying with us again here on Jet Black Airways, where the phrase jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us till the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice, forever.